No one noticed her at first. That was exactly what the plus-size maid had hoped for. Head lowered, tray clutched tightly against her chest, she moved through the grand dining hall, one careful step at a time. The long sleeves of her uniform hid most of the bruises. Most, but not the deep purple mark spreading across her cheek. She almost reached the kitchen. Almost. The ruthless Mafia Boss looked up from his breakfast. His eyes found hers, then drifted to the bruises. The porcelain cup slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the mansion. Every servant froze. He rose so suddenly that his chair crashed backward. His voice cut through the silence like thunder. "Bring her to me." She stopped without turning around. Her fingers tightened around the serving tray until they trembled. When she finally looked back, tears already filled her eyes. "Please." Her voice barely escaped. "Don't make this worse." The Mafia Boss didn't answer. He simply stared at the bruises. And for the first time in years, everyone in the room saw something they never thought possible. Not anger, not coldness, but a man who looked ready to destroy anyone responsible for hurting someone under his roof. No one noticed her at first. That was exactly what the plus-size maid had hoped for. Head lowered, tray clutched tightly against her chest, she moved through the grand dining hall one careful step at a time. The long sleeves of her uniform hid most of the bruises. Most, but not the deep purple mark spreading across her cheek. She almost reached the kitchen. Almost. The ruthless Mafia Boss looked up from his breakfast. His eyes found hers, then drifted to the bruises. The porcelain cup slipped from his hand and shattered across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the mansion. Every servant froze. He rose so suddenly that his chair crashed backward. His voice cut through the silence like thunder. "Bring her to me." She stopped without turning around. Her fingers tightened around the serving tray until they trembled. When she finally looked back, tears already filled her eyes. "Please," her voice barely escaped. "Don't make this worse." The Mafia Boss didn't answer. He simply stared at the bruises. For the first time in years, everyone in the room saw something they never expected. Not anger, not coldness, but a man struggling to control his fury. Without another word, he turned toward the elderly butler. "My library." The butler immediately understood. Within seconds, the dining hall emptied. No one dared to question the order. The maid followed several steps behind, clutching the tray so tightly her hands had begun to shake. The walk through the mansion felt endless. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them carried far more weight than any accusation could have. When they entered the private library, the heavy oak doors closed with a quiet thud. The room smelled of old leather and cedarwood. Morning light streamed through tall windows, illuminating thousands of books lining the walls. He motioned toward a chair. "Sit." She hesitated, then slowly obeyed. He remained standing for several seconds, before walking to a small cabinet and retrieving a first aid kit. Without asking permission, he placed it on the table between them. "Treat your wounds." Her eyes widened. "I'll be fine." "No." His voice remained calm. "You won't." She stared at the unopened box. "I've worked here for nearly 3 years. I've never caused trouble. I know. I don't want to lose this job." "You won't." The certainty in his voice caught her off guard. She swallowed hard. "It isn't your concern. It became my concern the moment you walked into my house, covered in bruises." Her breathing faltered. She looked away before he could see the tears gathering in her eyes. After a long silence, he finally asked the question that had been hanging over the room since breakfast. "Who did this to you?" She closed her eyes. For a moment, it seemed she might answer. Instead, she whispered the same lie she had probably repeated countless times before. "I fell." He didn't argue. He didn't accuse her of lying. He simply walked closer and gently lifted one sleeve of her uniform. Dark fingerprints circled her wrist. Someone hadn't hit her. Someone had held her down. His jaw tightened. Those weren't the marks of an accident. They were the marks of fear. He let the fabric fall back into place. When he spoke again, his voice had grown even quieter. "Look at me." Slowly, she did. "What are you protecting?" A single tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't an answer. But it was enough for him to know she wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting someone else. Then she whispered the words that changed everything. "If I tell you." She struggled to breathe. "Someone dies." The library door closed behind her. For several seconds, no one spoke. The Mafia boss remained exactly where he was, staring at the chair she had just left. Then he turned toward the elderly butler. "Find out who she's afraid of." The old man gave a single nod. "No assumptions," the Mafia boss added. "I want facts." "It will be done." By lunchtime, whispers had already spread through the mansion. Some believed she had an abusive boyfriend. Others thought she owed money to dangerous people. A few insisted she had simply fallen, and everyone was overreacting. She said nothing. She worked exactly as she always had. She served lunch, cleared tables, polished silver, apologized whenever someone thanked her. The bruises remained hidden beneath her sleeves. Only her swollen cheek betrayed the truth. From the second-floor balcony, the Mafia boss watched in silence. She smiled at everyone. The same careful smile. The kind people wear when they hope no one asks another question. Late that afternoon, the head of security arrived. He placed a thin folder on the library desk. "Everything we found so far." The Mafia boss opened it. Employment records, background checks, references. Nothing unusual. No disciplinary reports. No criminal history. No outstanding debt. A woman with an ordinary life. Or someone who had become very good at hiding the extraordinary. What about her personal life? We're still looking. The next morning, another report arrived. Neighbors from her apartment building described her as quiet. She left early, returned late, never invited visitors inside, never caused trouble. One elderly neighbor recalled hearing loud arguments several times during the past year, but no one had ever seen another person enter her apartment. That made no sense. If someone was hurting her, where were they? The butler entered carrying fresh coffee. "There is something else." The Mafia boss looked up. "She refuses every paid vacation." "Why?" No explanation. "Has she ever asked for a raise?" "No." "Taken a loan?" "Never." The old man hesitated before adding one final detail. "Every month, almost her entire salary disappears within hours of being deposited." The Mafia boss closed the folder. The to whom? We don't know yet. That evening, he happened to pass the staff entrance. The maid stood alone beneath the stone archway, speaking softly on an old phone. He couldn't hear every word, only fragments. "I'm fine." "No, don't tell anyone. I'll send it tomorrow. It's okay. I promise." Her voice sounded gentle, comforting, almost like she was trying to reassure the person on the other end. Then she noticed him. The call ended immediately. She slipped the phone into her pocket and forced the same familiar smile. "I'm sorry. I'll get back to work." He simply nodded. He didn't stop her. Not yet. 2 days later, the head of security returned. This time, the folder was thicker, and he looked less confident than before. "We checked local hospitals. No recent reports. We checked police databases. No complaints. We checked court records. Nothing." The Mafia boss frowned. "People don't receive bruises like those from nothing." "I agree. So what's missing?" The head of security took a slow breath. We expanded the search. He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. A list of bank transfers. Every month. The same destination, the same amount. Year after year. The Mafia Boss studied the account number. Who owns it? We're waiting for confirmation. The answer arrived the following morning. The head of security walked into the library without knocking. For the first time since the investigation had begun, his expression revealed genuine surprise. He placed a sealed envelope on the desk. The account owner has been identified. The Mafia Boss looked up. The boyfriend. The head of security slowly shook his head. There isn't one. Silence filled the room. Then came the words neither man had expected to hear. We've found no boyfriend. No fiancé. No husband. No record that she's ever lived with anyone. The Mafia Boss stared at the envelope. If no man was waiting for her at home, then who had left those bruises? And why was she willing to protect them? The sealed envelope remained unopened for several minutes. The Mafia Boss simply stared at it. If there was no boyfriend, then every assumption they had made was wrong. He finally broke the seal. Inside were only 3 documents. The first was a bank record. The monthly transfers had all gone to the same recipient for nearly 5 years. The account belonged to a teenage girl, not a husband, not a partner, not a parent. A younger sister. He looked up. So she wasn't sending money to the person hurting her. The head of security slowly shook his head. No, she was supporting someone else. Silence settled over the library. For the first time, the missing pieces began to shift into place. She wasn't trapped because she had nowhere to go. She was trapped because someone else depended on her staying. There was something else, the head of security said quietly. I requested permission to expand the search after we identified the family. The Mafia Boss gave a slight nod. Another folder appeared on the desk. This one was much thicker. Hospital records. He opened the first page. Emergency room. Dislocated shoulder. No police report filed. Second page. 2 cracked ribs. Patient refused assistance. Third page. Severe concussion. Requested immediate discharge. Fourth page. Burn injuries. No statement given. Fifth page. Hairline fracture. Cause listed as an accident. He continued turning pages. Each one revealed another injury, another emergency visit, another refusal to cooperate, another excuse, another silence. By the time he reached the final page, the room had become unbearably quiet. How long? He asked. The head of security answered without looking up from the file. The earliest record we found was 12 years ago. 12 years. The Mafia Boss slowly closed the folder. Fresh bruises had brought her into his library, but they were only the newest scars in a lifetime of violence. There is one witness, the head of security continued. An emergency room nurse remembered her. He handed over a typed statement. The nurse described a frightened young woman who arrived bleeding late one winter night. She insisted she had fallen down the stairs. No one believed her. Before leaving, the nurse had quietly asked whether someone at home was hurting her. The young woman had looked toward the hospital window for a long time before answering. If I stay here, my sister will be alone with him. The Mafia Boss lowered the paper. For several seconds he couldn't bring himself to read another word. He had expected cruelty. He had not expected sacrifice. The butler entered the library without making a sound. They're waiting outside. He nodded toward the doorway. The young maid stepped inside. She immediately noticed the folders spread across the desk. Every color drained from her face. You investigated me. His voice remained calm. I investigated the lies. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at the hospital records. A faint, defeated smile crossed her lips. So, you know. I know enough to stop asking the wrong questions." She stood motionless. He gently pushed one chair away from the desk. "Sit." She remained standing. "I don't deserve your kindness. You deserve the truth." Tears welled in her eyes. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, he asked the only question that mattered. "How old were you?" She closed her eyes. 12. The answer seemed almost impossible to hear. 12 when it started? She nodded. "My mother died. A year later, she married him." The room fell silent once more. The Mafia boss said nothing. He simply listened. "It was easier when I was the one he blamed." Her voice cracked. "Because if he was angry with me, he left my sister alone." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away before another could follow. I kept thinking, if I could work harder, if I could send more money, if I stayed quiet, maybe one day she'd have a chance to leave. The Mafia boss leaned forward. "Then leave with her." She looked at him with heartbreaking sadness. "You still don't understand." He waited. She whispered the words that finally shattered every assumption he had made. "If I disappear, he'll find us. If I fight back, he'll punish her." He felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Helplessness. It was an emotion he had never allowed himself to feel. Then she spoke again, almost pleading. "Please, don't hurt him." He stared at her in disbelief. After everything she had endured, she was still protecting the man responsible. Seeing his confusion, she quietly finished the sentence. "My sister still needs a father." For the first time in years, the ruthless Mafia boss had no answer. The library remained silent long after she left. The Mafia boss stood by the window, watching the first drops of rain strike the stone courtyard. He finally understood why she had never asked anyone for help. She didn't believe she could survive. She believed only her sister had to. Without turning around, he spoke. "Call the legal team." The butler nodded. "And the forensic accountants. The investigators too. If that man has spent 12 years hurting innocent people, he didn't start with her. He won't end with her." Within 48 hours, the investigation expanded far beyond a domestic abuse case. Financial records surfaced. Tax filings, insurance claims, property transfers, old police reports. Everything that had once seemed unrelated slowly connected into a single pattern. The man hadn't only controlled people. He had manipulated systems. Years earlier, he had claimed disability benefits while secretly working for cash. He had filed false insurance claims after staging property damage. He had hidden income to avoid taxes. He had taken government assistance intended for his own household while forcing others to pay every expense. Even the money the young maid had faithfully transferred each month had quietly disappeared into accounts he controlled. He hadn't simply stolen her childhood. He had stolen her future. The Mafia boss read every report. He signed every authorization. He never once suggested violence. "We don't touch him," he told his security chief. "We expose him. If the evidence is clean, he'll destroy himself." Days later, prosecutors agreed to reopen multiple investigations. The hospital records established a long history of suspected abuse. Financial investigators confirmed years of fraud. Former neighbors came forward after learning others were finally speaking. One witness admitted hearing screams through the walls for years. Another remembered seeing the younger sister crying outside in the middle of winter. Everyone had suspected something. No one had known the whole truth. Until now. The arrest took place just after sunrise. The Mafia boss wasn't there. He didn't need to be. He watched the live security feed from his office. Police vehicles stopped outside the small house. Detectives approached the front door. A warrant was presented. The man shouted before anyone spoke. He denied everything. He accused everyone of lying. Then the boxes of financial records were carried outside. Computers, documents, bank statements, tax files, tax files. The shouting slowly faded. Reality had arrived. At the estate, the maid sat quietly in the library. She hadn't stopped twisting her hands since morning. "I never wanted this," she whispered. The mafia boss looked at her. "You never caused this." She shook her head. "He'll hate me. He already chose violence. That choice was never yours." Tears rolled silently down her face. For the first time, she didn't try to hide them. By afternoon, every major charge had been formally announced. Domestic abuse, insurance fraud, tax evasion, theft of public assistance, financial exploitation, witness intimidation. Each charge alone carried serious consequences. Together, they ended any chance of walking away. Before officers placed him into the transport vehicle, he caught sight of the mafia boss, who had quietly arrived to ensure the investigation faced no outside interference. His face twisted with rage. "You ruined my life," the words echoed across the street. People stopped to watch. News cameras turned. The mafia boss took one slow step forward. His expression never changed. No, his voice was calm enough to silence the crowd. "You ruined hers." A long pause followed. "I simply made sure." The world finally noticed. No one applauded. No one needed to. Justice spoke louder than celebration. The officers closed the vehicle door. Moments later, it disappeared down the road. The mafia boss remained standing on the sidewalk. The rain had stopped. For the first time in years, there would be no one waiting behind a locked door. No one deciding whether fear would enter that home tonight. Back at the estate, the maid stood alone beneath the mansion's front steps, watching the evening sky. She didn't smile. Not yet. But she took one slow, steady breath. It was the first breath she had taken in years, without wondering what waited for her after sunset. The nightmare wasn't over. Healing never happened in a single day. But for the first time since she was 12 years old, tomorrow no longer frightened her. 3 months passed. The mansion slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. Breakfast was served on time. Fresh flowers filled the hallways every Monday morning. The staff laughed a little more than they used to. Life moved forward. So did she. Her bruises had faded long ago. The shadows beneath her eyes disappeared more slowly. Some wounds healed in weeks. Others needed much longer. The younger sister had moved into a safe apartment with assistance from a local support program. She had returned to school. For the first time in years, neither of them looked over their shoulders whenever someone knocked on the door. The mafia boss quietly arranged everything. He never mentioned it. She discovered the truth only after thanking the social worker assigned to the case. "You already thanked the person responsible," the woman smiled. "He just prefers not to be thanked." One autumn afternoon, the butler approached her while she arranged fresh flowers in the entrance hall. "The boss would like to see you." She smiled nervously. "I didn't break anything this time," the old man chuckled. "No, I believe today is quite the opposite." She found him waiting in the estate garden. The afternoon sun filtered through rows of old oak trees. For the first time since arriving at the mansion years earlier, she noticed how peaceful the place truly was. He handed her a small wooden box. "I think this belongs to you." She frowned. "I don't understand." "Open it." Inside lay the employee name badge she had worn on her first day at the estate. She smiled softly. "I thought I lost this." "You did." She looked closer. Something was different. The title beneath her name had changed. No longer Maid. Now it read, House Manager. She stared at the badge without speaking. "I don't deserve this." He shook his head. "No, you earned it." Tears gathered in her eyes once again. Not because she was hurting, because for the first time, someone had seen more than her scars. He had seen her loyalty, her kindness, her strength, the qualities she had spent years believing no one would ever notice. The Mafia Boss looked across the garden. The day I saw those bruises. He paused. I thought I had failed to protect someone living under my roof. She slowly shook her head. You didn't give me these scars. I know. He met her eyes. But if you'll let me, I'll make sure nobody ever adds another one. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she did something she had never done before. She stepped forward, not because she needed protection, but because she finally trusted someone enough to stop carrying the weight alone. She embraced him, quietly, without a word. He hesitated only a second before returning the embrace. Not as a rescuer, not as a powerful man, simply as another human being who understood that some victories weren't won in courtrooms. They were won when someone finally believed they were worth saving. Months earlier, she had walked through the dining hall, hoping no one would notice her bruises. Now she walked through the same mansion, with her head held high. The scars hadn't disappeared. Some never would. But they no longer defined who she was. The staff greeted her with warm smiles. The younger maids sought her advice. The butler proudly called her by her new title. And every time she passed the library door, she remembered the morning her life changed forever. Not because a powerful man rescued her, but because, for the first time, someone looked beyond the bruises and refused to look away. Sometimes, justice begins with courage. Sometimes healing begins with kindness. And sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't the one who fights your battles. It's the one who quietly reminds you that your life has always been worth protecting. The end.